Welcome to the Undisputed Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Taft. This podcast is the full show from today's episode of Undisputed from start to finish. They've got a busy slate, so Skip, Shannon, let's get to it.
Good morning. Welcome to Undisputed. I'm Jenny Taft. Happy Friday, guys. I'm with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe. How we doing?
Doing good. Skip, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm always doing better than you're doing. Yeah, thank you.
You know, today is the anniversary of one of the most iconic speeches ever given, the I Have a Dream speech.
Is it really?
Happened 57 years ago today.
1963.
And which led to the Civil Rights Act. Civil rights in 1964. Okay. So those that say protesting doesn't work, it does.
I think I heard that from Broussard yesterday, and I did not agree.
Exactly.
Thank you for the reminder there, Shannon. Guys, it has been a busy couple days in the NBA. Let's catch up on everything that took place yesterday. After the remainder of the NBA season was nearly lost to protest, players agreed it was in their best interest to finish out the playoffs. The league released a statement saying, quote, "We are hopeful to resume games either Friday or Saturday." LeBron also changed his tune from pushing to cancel the season Wednesday night to yesterday siding with the majority of the players who wanted to play. Shannon, what do you make of LeBron's change of heart here?
I believe LeBron James always wanted to play, but I believe LeBron James wanted to exert the maximum amount of leverage. He wanted to exert being LeBron James because he's tired of symbols. He's tired of slogans. He's tired of hashtags. He doesn't feel that the people that are in power, that has more power than him, that has the contacts, the reach, the outreach, are doing nearly enough. And they think by putting Black Lives Matter on a court or putting Black Lives Matter or say her name and all those things while not reaching out to the DAs, while not talking to the mayors, while not talking to the Congress people in their community and that they can reach and have contact to, that's going to go directly to changing these police policies. They're not doing enough. So LeBron James says the one thing that I can do to exert my pressure on you is to take my talents. And maybe Kawhi and Doc Rivers, if we take our threaten to take what you want away, well, maybe you'll act right. And I believe that's what LeBron, I skip because he's put too much time in this. LeBron knows he's closer to the end than the beginning. And when you realize that, Skip, you look at things totally different. The things that you thought about doing in your 20s, you don't think about doing it, especially when you're talking about a career. He's not like a doctor where he's going to be doing this 30 years. He's going to be a lawyer. He can do this for 30, 40 years. That's not how sports work. If you're fortunate, you get your 10, and then you go from there. He's at 17. So we know, like to think that he's got a couple of more years, good years to go, but he doesn't have 10, 15 years. And he wants to see changes. And he's like, owners, we appreciate you giving money to the community. But what we need you to do is to reach the people that we know you can reach that can enact policy changes, that can do something with these this policing. That's what LeBron wanted to do, Skip. I don't believe LeBron for 1 second wanted to sit out after he spent a lifetime trying to get in this very position. But I also believe that he spent a lifetime once he became an adult and saw what was going on. He wanted to change it, and he felt the only way that he knew about going to change or exerting the force to get people that can actually change it was to threaten to withhold a service, and I have no problem with him doing that.
Okay, I hear everything you just said, but I saw this situation unfold a little differently than you did. Step back for a second and think about this with me. I believe that LeBron James just got George Hilled for the second time in his career. I believe that something that George Hill did this time, as he did at the free throw line back in, remember, 2018 Game 1 at Golden State? I believe that, once again, George Hill prompted LeBron to become extremely frustrated and to throw a fit, and you could argue to even pout, or at least go into a shell for a while. And let's unfold and unpack what just happened. George Hill has become the sort of emotional leader of the Bucks. He's obviously not the best player. You know who that is. And that guy is Defensive Player of the Year and looks like he's going to win the MVP. But it's the out front spokesman for this team over the last couple, 3 weeks has become one George Hill. Am I right about that?
Correct.
So it was reported that the Bucks had a raging internal debate in their locker room leading up to that scheduled game at 4 p.m. Eastern against the Orlando Magic, who had no idea that the game was about to be boycotted, so they're out there ready to go.
Correct.
They are warmed up, ready to tip it off in 5 minutes.
Right.
Behind the scenes, LeBron James and Chris Paul had been working for an organized, unified, all-NBA boycott of, I don't know how many games, I don't even know what the plan was, but they had a plan in place that they had discussed.
Right.
And I'm assuming that George Hill, as sort of the leader of the team in the bubble, when it comes to racial justice, was somewhat aware of that plan, somewhat aware, because they wanted to go all together, have one big unified media session, led by who? The man who should have been leading it, LeBron James, who is the voice of the NBA when it comes to racial justice, who has been for, I don't know, 10 years more. That man, LeBron James, right?
Yeah.
Who is the head of the Players Association? Obviously, it's Chris Paul. Those two, I believe, had planned to have a huge media conference in which both in person in the bubble and virtually they talked to America about what their goals were, what their specific details were, that they want this, and that to happen. And they had it all planned out, and it was poised to go. And all of a sudden, something happened. Out of nowhere, blindsiding everybody, including the Magic and the referees and everybody involved. Every NBA executive was completely blindsided all the way to the top, to the commissioner, by what George Hill, it seemed, had sort of emotionally driven the Bucks to do. And they all admitted they were going back and forth. There was a whole lot of disagreement in the locker room. Should we, shouldn't we? Should we, shouldn't we? Very split over it. And at the last second, they finally said, okay. George Hill's point was, our hearts were not in playing basketball. It seemed irrelevant to us at this point. Okay. So they broke ranks, and they went, they preempted LeBron and Chris Paul. Boom. They decide to boycott, and it was shockwaves across the country because, as you know, it was a ripple effect throughout sports all night long. Right. Well, it was heavily reported that LeBron James was not happy with that, and I don't think Chris Paul was happy with that either. So all of a sudden, within...
Yeah, because I think the thing is, Skip, the one thing that you want to do in a situation like this is that you want to seem like you're united. Unified. You want to put on a united front. You better. So when people start coming... There's no way they can penetrate the fortress. I got to tell you, I as much as I respect George Hill, once upon a time, San Antonio Spur, I don't want to hear George Hill speak about this. I want to hear LeBron, and I want to hear Chris Paul. They've been at this for a long time. George Hill sort of came out of left field on this. No offense to him, but he and Sterling Brown spoke at sort of a mini media session, remember, in the hallway outside the locker room after the game? Yes. And they had spent the 2.5, whatever hours that the game would have taken to be on the phone with lawmakers up in Milwaukee, up in the state of Wisconsin, right? Okay, all great. And we applauded them. I think the world applauded the Bucks, right? Okay, that upstaged and preempted what LeBron and Chris Paul had working on the back, you know, behind the scenes. But it was about to be in front of the scenes. And we're hearing George Hill talk about it, and we're hearing Sterling Brown, and I'm thinking, well, they're qualified only because this happened in their town. Kenosha is virtually a suburb of Milwaukee. Sterling Brown he's qualified because they went a step further to him. He was the victim of police brutality. Absolutely. When was that? I wrote this down. It was in it was January 26th of 2018 at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was the south side of Milwaukee. He pulls up in a Walgreens parking lot and parked across the handicap spaces because obviously there weren't many cars, and he wanted to run in and run out. And a police car happened to be sort of driving by and came over and confronted him. You're parked in the handicap. And then all of a sudden backup is called, and before you know it, he has been tackled and he has been tased. And several of the officers were somehow punished. I don't know what their punishment was, but they were reprimanded publicly for inappropriate action. Okay, so he had firsthand experience
in the city of Milwaukee.
Correct.
That was obviously almost like a precursor to what happened
in Kenosha.
Okay, so are they both qualified? Yes, they're qualified. Their team is qualified. But it was, again, widely reported that LeBron was very upset with this, and then he and Chris Paul go to this meeting, which was 8 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday night, and it was, according to everybody, it was chaotic. Everybody has an opinion. A lot of players were upset with the Bucks. Then a lot of players said, no, leave them alone. They did a great thing. Right. Jaylen Brown was defending them. Doc Rivers is speaking. Other coaches are speaking. It's madness for a while.
Well, that's what happens, Skip, when you're not unified.
You're not unified.
When you get one group splinters off,
right.
And then there's other you have to take into account. There are other people in this thing also.
So LeBron got, again, I wasn't there, but I'm reading all the reports. He got increasingly frustrated in what became a 2.5-hour meeting.
Right.
And he became at wit's end at the end of the night and heard no specific plan. It's like it was derailed.
Exactly.
It was completely off the tracks.
Okay, yeah, we boycott a game, now what?
Okay. So at the end, he finally says, you know what? I can't take this anymore. I am out of here. And he walks out, and a number of his, I don't know if all of his teammates followed him, but a number did. And then a number of the Clippers walk out. And then I believe someone from LeBron's camp told someone in the media that, hey, the Lakers and Clippers are prepared not to play. They're ready not to play in the playoffs. Our Chris Haynes, who we have on the show a lot, TNT, Yahoo, we had him on yesterday, and he was up front saying, I just don't believe they don't want to play.
Right.
Like they're going to sleep on it, and they're about to have another meeting at 11 a.m. Eastern yesterday to see if they had sort of slept it off. Right. Well, reportedly, a number of star players then went to LeBron's room to sort of talk him down, talk him off the ledge, because he was just at wit's end over, what are we doing? Right. We just blew a huge opportunity to do this right. Right. And it worked out right for the Bucks. Right. The Bucks are the stars of the night, and they should be. I'm still applauding what they did. It was great. Yes. But it preempted everything that was already in motion, and it took all night to get LeBron kind of, okay, because, look, I'm with you. He wanted to play. Right. But remember, a lot of teams had internal dissension and doubt about going to the bubble, right?
And he was out front from the beginning.
One. In fact, ironically, he was kind of quiet about, I'm not going to say he was radio silent, but in the interim from the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis to the start of the bubble, he was fairly quiet because he was all in for basketball. Yes. I got no problem with that because, to your point, he's at the end of year 17. Right. He has a good team. It's 50-50 now between Clippers, Lakers. Maybe you can throw the Bucks. They're the third favorite right now. But does he have a great chance to go? Absolutely. You better believe he does. And I am not, because he's been such a trailblazer, such a powerful spokesman for racial justice for so many years in this league, that I got no problem with him wanting to go play basketball and maybe improve his legacy. Right. He's got a real shot to go 4-6 in the finals instead of 3-6. And to me, 4-6 sounds a lot better than 3-6.
I think the thing is, for me, is that when Chris Paul and LeBron, what they're trying to put together, okay, let's put this together so we can seem unified. Okay, Skip, it's kind of like you and I. We're going to say, okay, Skip, this is what we're going to do. Next contract, we're going to go in there, we're going to ask for this, and this. Yep. And then you go in there, and then when we go in there together, well, Skip, you said this, and then we're like, hold on, wait a minute. You
preempted it.
Right. Yeah. So now, all of a sudden, it's like, we're trying to play catch-up. Well, the Bucks do what they did, and they didn't tell anybody. Okay. So how does Chris Paul and how does the other players react? So they don't really have a choice. What choice do they have in the matter? Because the whole thing was, Skip, we decided as a unit that we were going to the bubble. Yep. But you took this upon yourself when other people are involved, because you have to understand, for your actions, there are other people that have to have reactions. So I think that's the thing that was upsetting, because the one thing we know about the NBA and MLB, that their union is normally together, Skip. And they don't have one, doing this or saying that. Them and Michelle Roberts, they walk lockstep with the NBA. MLB, pretty much the same thing.
That is true. This was very un-NBA-like.
Yes.
Okay, so think about in microcosm, George Hill sort of did it to LeBron again, because for those who don't remember this, George Hill, with 4 seconds left, he goes to the free throw line, game 1 at Oakland against the prohibitively favored Golden State Warriors. And he makes the first free throw to tie. That tied it at 107. Yeah. Well, he's got a free throw with 4. I don't know if they'd made a shot at the end of the, but this is to win the game potentially. And he missed it. Right. And then it gets exacerbated. It gets compounded by J.R. Smith's mental blunder. He dribbles out the clock. Right. The wrong direction. And LeBron is again at wit's end because George Hill has missed the free throw on a feed from LeBron. Right. And then J.R. has blown it all up. And so LeBron, and I didn't love this, but he went and sat a little apart from his team. And I thought he pouted. And they lost overtime 17-7, and he didn't shoot for the first 2.5 minutes of overtime. Whatever. The point is, George Hill, of all players, who, as a Spurs fan, I'll forever remember that R.C. Buford traded George Hill for Kawhi Leonard. He did, straight up. And he also got Davis Bertans, who's a really good player, now obviously in Washington. But he got both the Kawhi pick and Davis Bertans back for George Hill. Is that not one of the all-time steals? Yeah. Okay, well, so that's what I remember from George Hill. He went to IUPUI, like small school, Indianapolis. So the point is, that's the guy who did it to LeBron a second time and forced, sort of pushed LeBron into a funk. Like, how could you do this? Because he was the emotional leader of the Bucks. Right. And because I think, and also, Skip, I believe that, okay, if we come out as you, now we can demand, because they did it like this, Skip, okay, you might have it. So we need to come together, have an idea. Okay, these are the 3 or 4 most important things that we want to relay to the owners. Well, when the Bucks did what they did, okay, we're just protesting because doesn't seem to be anything done. What are you asking in return? What are you asking the owners to do? Yep. And Chris and LeBron are probably sitting there because, like you said, Skip, you need to strategize. You need to plot. You need to plan. As Killer Mike says, plot, plan, strategize, mobilize. Okay, I don't think... I love that, by the way. Skip, I don't think a whole lot of plotting. I don't think a whole lot of planning. I don't think a whole, strategizing went into what they did. It seemed really... To the Bucks? Right. Well, they didn't know that they were fighting in the locker room, not fighting, but debating in the locker room. Should we, shouldn't we? Till 5 seconds left. And all of a sudden they just plunge and say, we're out. Right. We don't play. Yeah. What? Well, see, a lot of times what happened, my grandfather told a story that he was working on the farm. And he said they had agreed, well, he was working, and they had agreed to tell the man that they wanted to raise. They was going to get more money. So they pushed my grandfather up to go ask. Well, my grandfather asked. Yeah. So when the man asked, well, who's all in agreement with Barney? Ain't nobody say nothing. My granddad said they cut his pay. Yep. You see, Skip, all of a sudden you need everybody. You need one voice. So if we're going to speak, make sure that we're all in agreement. Obviously. And yet you can't condemn the Bucks for what they did. No. No. It was like almost an emotional overreaction at the last second that blindsided the whole league. Right. Okay? Okay, Skip, if you want to blindside the whole league, that's fine. But the Players Association, Chris Paul, Iggy, guys that are in the bubble, that are in that's the council of the NBA PA. Yep. That's a whole different ball game, Skip. It is. And remember what George Hill said just a few days back? We shouldn't have came to this damn place to start with, honestly. Right. Yes. Okay, so he was out already, sort of, his heart was out of it. Right. And yet, there were a number of according to Chris Haynes, the majority, maybe the vast majority of players who attended the 8 o'clock meeting, they still wanted to play. Right. And Michelle Roberts, bless her heart, she had made it very clear to them, if you guys stop now, they are severe and long-lasting because you're going to lose a huge chunk of your salary. I think it was like 25 to 30% of your salary you're going to lose next year. Right. If you stop now, and you're going to open the door for them to blow up your collective bargaining agreement and lock you out and start this whole thing over. Correct. You are risking disaster, financial disaster here if you do this. Right. Well, who knows this better than LeBron James?
Right.
Who gets it better than
Right.
LeBron when it comes to that kind of financial power? He's not going to not play.
Right. It's Skip. Plus, also, if you remember what he says, when I read up on things, I educate myself, I'll speak on it.
Yeah.
Trayvon Martin.
That's
So
true.
he's very meticulous
He is.
on what he's willing to speak out on.
Yeah.
That's why everybody, when the thing happened in China, well, LeBron, like, man, I wasn't even thinking about no China. I was just over here to play a basketball
That
game.
is true.
And you want me to respond to something Daryl Morey tweeted in the middle of the night.
No, he was reticent because he said, I just don't know.
Yeah. So when he feels that when he's educated himself on a topic, he will speak on that topic. And right now, and you see the way his approach is that get out the vote, and he teamed up with the Dodgers about the polling station.
He did.
So I think that's the biggest thing, Skip. He just wanted, look, George, if you want to have a speaking part in this, I got no problem with that. But let us all strategize. Let's all mobilize, come up with a plan of how we're going to move forward and what we're going to be asking these 30 owners to give us in return. And we're not talking about donating money to the community. We need their contacts. We need their outreach because they're the bridge into which we can get to the people, the lawmakers, the police heads, the mayors, the governors, the state senators, and legislators.
So LeBron James in the beginning went to the bubble with two purposes: to win a championship and to use that stage, which is still a huge, great stage, to make some resounding racial justice statement. And he saw his opening and his opportunity right here, right now, after what happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He's poised. Chris Paul is poised. This would have been a shining moment for both of them, and I think especially for LeBron James. And all of a sudden, he got preempted by George Hill.
Skip, you remember the ESPYs? You remember when Chris Paul, LeBron James, D-Wade, Carmelo?
Do I?
That was the moment of the ESPYs.
It was.
But it was planned. It didn't all of a sudden, hey, guys, right before, hey, we got something we want to do. They had planned it.
And it was scripted as it should have been. Okay.
That's what you have to do in situations like this. Skip, Dr. King ain't just show up. He just didn't fly in one day and start speaking. It was a plan to go to Birmingham. It was a plan to march on Washington. It was a plan to get fair housing. Skip, people, I don't know how many realize this, but Dr. King, when he was trying to get fair housing, he rented an apartment in Chicago. Skip, he says, I don't know if the nonviolent protest that we use in the South is going to be able to work up in the North.
So while the Bucks got all the credit for this, and they deserve it, I take nothing away, and I don't think you do either.
No, absolutely not.
The bulk of the credit should have gone to the league and the face of the league, LeBron, if that hadn't happened. Because I think I think the league could have made an even stronger statement, unified, than the Bucks made solo.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give the league a little credit. I'm going to give Adam Silver some credit because we've seen other leagues that when players try to exert authority, their constitutional right and say things aren't right, we see the league buck. And push back.
No, this league never has before. So
give them credit for that.
I do, and I'm ready for some basketball.
Well, I guess hopefully Saturday, Sunday. I don't know when. But Skip, you do realize that when you push the games back, and because they had to cancel the games last night in order for it to be fair, you don't want someone to have 2 days off and then one team play with 1 day off. So you have to make it fair. But
I thought maybe it would be tonight. Now it's feeling not tonight.
Right, it's feeling Saturday. But they say, well, October 15th, 17th was the game 7. If it goes that far, now you got to push that back to what? 19th, 21st? So you might have a game in November.
No mercy. Well, there have been no NBA playoff games the past 2 nights, and while the league left a window open for games to resume tonight, Adrian Wojnarowski is reporting that the expectation is that games resume Saturday. So with potentially 3 days totally off from playing, Skip, I want to ask you, which team will be hurt the most by this postponement?
Mr. Sharpe, I have 2, and I'll take them in reverse order. The least maybe affected of these 2 teams that they're going to be troubled are the Bucks. And we just talked about the Bucks and how they were internally split all the way up to tip-off of the Orlando game. Is your heart in it? Is it not in it? Back and forth. So it's interesting to me, and maybe not coincidental, they have recently, the last couple of days, fallen from 1st to 3rd in the odds, the betting odds, the odds makers' odds. Now, Lakers, Clippers are co-favorites. Bucks are just barely third.
Right.
But still, they were first.
Right.
Just a few days back. So is Las Vegas looking at them like, is your heart in it or not? Well, I don't know. You've been around a lot of teams. You know how that internal heart of the team can be broken.
Right.
It can be lost. And maybe you just don't really feel like playing basketball.
Right.
Which leads me to the team that I picked to win it all, the Clippers. I think they could be even more troubled, and we start with their coach, my favorite coach, Doc Rivers. As we know, he just went viral spilling his guts over the racial justice issues that continue to haunt the black community, to cause such agony and pain and fear in your community. Doc was eloquent and powerful in the message he delivered. His players heard it too.
Right.
And they know how his heart is broken. And going to the bubble, was there any team less troubled than or I should say more troubled than the Clippers?
Right.
About should we, shouldn't we? Is it time to play basketball or not? Lou Williams is on the fence. A number of other players on the fence. Should we even go there and play?
And then you had several players leave the bubble.
You have. For different reasons. We could go all through them, but Lou Williams obviously went to Atlanta, and I don't want to make jokes about it, but he was really on the fence about going to the bubble in the first place.
Correct.
Now we have Paul George, who has issues, cabin fever issues in the bubble, and he went through, as he said, anxiety and depression, maybe in need of some counseling, just stuck in the bubble for a couple of months. And now we even had reportedly Kawhi Leonard, the quiet man, but he was reportedly ready to not play and to end the playoffs on Wednesday night.
Right.
And then there was the Doc Rivers story of yesterday, and he said they thought it was over. His whole team thought it was over when they walked out of that meeting behind LeBron James on Wednesday night.
Right.
Of course, he was asking yesterday, well, where are they now? And he said, oh, they want to play. They're really looking forward to it. I can't trust that after all this team has been through.
Right.
I can't trust that, Doc. I'm sorry. I wish I could. But here's my final problem with the Clippers. And I still like them as a team. But it was widely reported, your man LeBron James, as he walked out, some Lakers and most of the Clippers followed him out of the meeting. It troubles me because they look to LeBron for the signal of how they should handle it. They were following the leader, who is LeBron James, who's leading both teams. Okay, well, that doesn't feel right to me. You should have your own internal leadership, and I've told you from the start, I'm not sure who the team leader is. Kawhi's not a natural-born leader.
Right.
Paul George, obviously, to me, he's more complimentary star. He's not the leader emotionally out front of this team. A lot of people think it's Lou Williams. And then he went to Atlanta. Well, did he disqualify himself? Who is the leader? Well, they don't have a leader like LeBron James, is clearly the face of the Lakers and the league. So it was troubling to me that they followed him out like he showed them the way. They weren't sure what to do until he showed them what to do. Okay, well, that's obviously your primary competition. You share a building with them in Los Angeles. It was just, it hit me the wrong way. And finally, if we can just go on a purely, simply basketball level, their opponent right now, they're up 3-2, was missing its co-star the other night, Porzingis. I don't know if his knee can get better, but you just gave him, what, three really, if it's going to be tomorrow night. 3 extra days.
Right.
I think he has a bruised knee. That's what they said. I don't think he's got internal damage.
Right, there's no structural damage.
I don't think so, but they're still doubtful or iffy about whether he'll be able to come back. But they said it did give him a break because he is, to quote Rick Carlisle, 24-hour, round-the-clock treatment to get that knee better. So, again, all of a sudden, I told you early in the bubble when everybody was missing, I'm not sure about this team's psychological place in the bubble right now, and I'm less sure after what just happened.
Well, Skip, for me, I don't believe it's going to hurt anybody more than others. I agree with your last point that it helps Dallas because it seems to me they have the only significant injury. Maybe the Clippers. Patrick Beverly gets a couple of extra days to rest up that calf, and so maybe he's a definite.
Russell Westbrook was on the
Yes,
verge.
yes.
So maybe he'll be fine.
But as far as hurt, Skip, because I believe everybody's going to get the same amount of rest, and everybody was dealing with the same distraction. Should we or should we not play due to what transpired in Kenosha, Wisconsin?
Yep.
So with that being said, I don't think it hurt anyone. I really don't. I think it only helped a few teams that had significant players injured. As you mentioned, Russell Westbrook. Now that quad, because it looks like he was going to play, if I'm not mistaken, on Wednesday.
Well, TNT showed a pregame workout, and it looked like he was going full force to me. I was surprised he didn't play the last game.
Right, so now he has 2 days, so if he doesn't play, so now it's going to be Thursday, Friday, he's going to play Saturday. So he gets 3 full days off that quad to get even more healthy.
Yeah.
Porzingis, that knee, as you mentioned, he's getting treatment around the clock probably every 2-3 hours. He gets 3 days, so now we'll see where he is. Patrick Beverley, that calf, I don't know how much treatment he's getting, but I'm sure rest is helping him. So, Skip, I think everybody was dealing with the same thing, the same external forces that was tugging. What's going on outside of the bubble? How do we, down here, how do we use our platform to keep it in the public's eye and to bring about change? I think everybody's dealing with that same internal conflict right now. And so for me, Skip, I don't think anybody has gained an advantage by what's transpired by not playing. I think a few teams got some advantages by not playing because it allowed a few of their best players to get even closer to being healthy than not. But I don't think anybody lost anything, Skip. Look, I realize that the Lakers had played their best game in the bubble. The Clippers had played their best game in the bubble. But it's hard for me to see us, Skip. Do we really think that Portland's going to win 3 games without Dame Lillard? Is that what we believe?
And he went home.
Exactly.
I mean, he's gone. He's not even there to cheer them on.
So even if he wanted to turn the jet round ministry, he still would have to be in quarantine for 4 days.
He's gone out.
So he's done. So with that being said, Skip, I really don't, honestly, I don't think anybody is at a disadvantage. I think everybody's under the same umbrella for the simple fact they're going to have the same amount of rest time and they were dealing with the same issues. What was transpiring, not only what transpired, I believe it was Sunday in Kenosha, but what is transpiring still in America.
Well, for the Lakers' sake, it's another advantage, I think, for the Lakers because what's left of Portland, I thought maybe they could dredge up some underdog fight the other night if they'd gone on the scheduled at, what was it going to be, 9 p.m. Eastern? Now you take a team that's probably sick and tired of the bubble, and you made them stay for what feels the inevitable closeout game, right?
Yes.
And that's a 1-2-3 Cancun game, right? Here we go.
Yes. I just don't see how you lose 30 points. Your best player, there's no question he's their best player. And the last couple of games, Skip, they've kind of gotten blown out.
Kind of like
So I don't know. And think about it. It took a Herculean effort in game 1. Because as you said, they were behind in the middle part of the 4th quarter, and even it came down to like the very end of the ball game. So now you remove that, your leader, your best player, and somehow you're going to win 3 games without your best player.
No, they know.
Exactly.
And they're not happy that they had to sit in those hotel rooms for an extra 3
There are a lot
nights.
of people that, because Dame posted yesterday a picture of him and his son on a private jet, they're like, sure we on that jet with you, Dave.
Right.
Headed to Portland or wherever you're going.
Well, they're going to be on a jet soon.
Yeah, it won't be. Well, it will be private. It'll be their own charter.
Their team charter. Yep.
All right, guys, I want to keep talking about the decision the league made to keep playing and someone interesting who was involved in that. Michael Jordan was reportedly the voice of reason between the two sides. As the majority owner of the Hornets, MJ reached out to Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook to understand what the players wanted moving forward. During a virtual owners meeting yesterday, MJ reportedly told the other owners, quote, "Right now, listening is better than talking." Shannon, what do you make of MJ's role in all of this?
I'm not surprised. I mean, he's probably universally idolized by most of the guys, especially in that bubble, Skip. A lot of the NBA player, he's it. He's you know, not to be sacrilegious, but Skip, he's the Jesus. If you play basketball, he's it. And a lot of players feel that he's it. So he's unique because he played the game, Skip, and played the game at an extremely high level. Universally, a lot of people say he's the greatest. Okay, fine. For this argument, he's the greatest. Now he's the only African-American owner. So he gets to wear 2 hats. He's like, now he's talking to Chris Paul. Chris Paul's an endorsee of Brand Jordan.
He is.
So is Russell Westbrook.
And he talked to both of them.
And he's asking, okay, bro, what y'all want? What you looking for? And Chris Paul, in talking with LeBron James and maybe some of the other guys, says, look, Mike, we need Steve Ballmer worth $70 billion. We need him to use some of them contacts.
Yep.
We need guys that are worth $3, $4, $5, $8 billion to use contacts. It's not, and don't get me wrong, don't think we're not appreciative of you giving money to worthy causes in the communities. But the one cause that we really need is police reform.
Yep.
If we can get that, that is the first step. Can you do that? Can you use those contacts? Can you billionaires? Can you reach out to attorney generals? Can you reach out to DAs? Can you reach out to mayors and your states and local senators? Can you do that for us and ask them to get legislation, policing reform? Can we get that? That's what we need, Mike.
Yep.
And we don't feel, we appreciate the slogans, we appreciate the symbols, but now we need some substance. Because, Skip, I don't care how fancy the cake, does the cake taste good? You put all that icing. Oh, it's Oreo icing, it's vanilla, and we use this and we use that. Does the cake taste good? Okay, Black Lives Matter and say her name and how many more and vote reform and all that. The substance.
Yep.
Is what we need from these owners to reach across the aisle to get policies enacted that help these underserved communities. That's what we need, Mike. And Mike says, guys, y'all trying to talk over them. You're not trying to hear them. Right now, let's listen. Let them talk.
Let them talk.
We listen, and then we come up with a plan of how we can best help them. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's going to take. Because, Skip, there ain't no guarantee you won't be in the bubble again in December or January.
That's a fact.
And you're going to be down there with all 30 teams. So before we go start talking about we don't want to hear what they got to say, we might be in this very predicament again in 6 months. So let's hear what they have to say and what's the best plan of action that we can help these young men and help out America.
All very interesting. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Michael Jordan's. Had the honor and privilege of covering him in Chicago back in the late 90s, the Last Dance year, 1998. And I watched closely his evolution post-career.
Right.
When I first saw the headline on Jackie McMullen's piece on ESPN.com, I wanted to read too much into it. I wanted it to be that he was the saving grace figure, you know, like he saved the season.
Right.
The more I read of it, I'm not sure he saved the season.
No.
Was he a little bit of a mediator, a facilitator, just because he's, to me, the greatest player ever? Yes, he was. He's an owner who was the greatest player ever. So he's the only African-American owner, but he didn't just play. He really played.
Yeah. And just give if he called, how you not talk to Mike? If that guy called your phone, how you gonna say, nah, I ain't talking about it, hang up?
And to your point, both Chris and Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul, they work for Jordan Brand, and they're paid a lot of money. So, yes, they're going to take the call. And I checked before the show just to make sure, because I couldn't remember. What year was Chris born? He was 1985. Russell was 1988. So, yes, in their formative basketball years, he was rolling. Man.
Yeah, Chris Paul was 13 when Michael last year in Chicago.
Okay.
So
it would have dramatic impact. Some of the younger players today, they just don't, they last danced, you know, like, oh, that's who the guy was.
Exactly,
okay?
yes.
So I do think he played a minor significant role, but it was a significant role because he could explain to the owners, this is the mentality, this is where their heads are right now, and this is where your heads all better be if you want this to calm down so that you can resume. Right. And it did. And by the way, speaking of contacts, Michael Jordan's got some contacts out there. So he could pull some strings, right? So what do we know about The Last Dance? Michael Jordan was often criticized, even condemned as a player because of his lack of social stance. He avoided it at all literal costs, right? Because he didn't want to cost himself one penny of Nike money by taking a stand that would offend anybody. Right. The old quote, Republicans buy sneakers too. Okay, we get it. He says, I didn't really say that. And some
I said it yes. Yeah, I'm saying it yes. Hey, you know Republicans buy sneakers too.
But heart of hearts, I think that's pretty much
Right.
where his heart and head
Right.
were as in his prime of his basketball career. He just, and I've talked to him about, I talked to him about when he was a player, he would just always, what LeBron would say occasionally, I just don't know enough.
Right.
He had no interest in politics.
Zero.
He had no interest in anything outside that arena and that round ball.
Yeah.
That was his whole life. He was obsessed with
Right.
it, maybe to a fault. And yet, this Jordan that I'm watching now, as he ages, there's a sadness to him because he looks back on his former self.
I believe you're right.
And it hurts.
Yes.
And he said before the doc dropped, you know, he said, when you see some of the footage of me, you're going to think of me as a horrible guy. When he's getting on Scotty Burrell,
Right.
obviously, and it gets mean-spirited.
Right.
I defended it. You had some issues with it. You wouldn't have taken it if you had been a teammate, obviously.
Right.
But that's the way he did it.
Right.
And it worked for him and it worked for them.
Right.
But he looks back on it now, and I think it sort of horrifies him. What was I, you know,
Right.
that was me?
Right.
Yep. You had a rage to
Right.
win championships.
Skip, I think the thing is, I believe that when it comes to certain things, that Michael was always morally conscious. He knew that some of the things that were going on was wrong.
Yep.
But socially, Skip, you knew back then, if you spoke out of turn, endorsements dropped you automatically.
Yep.
No question, no, none of this, well, you know, we're going to see what's going on. Boom, that was it. And Michael was trying to build a brand.
Yep.
The best way I can build a brand is to be as Switzerland as possible, as neutral as possible. I don't say this, I don't say that. Everybody, you know, everybody is you know, the one community might be saying we need you to say more, but the other community is like, well, he's saying just enough. And so Michael took that approach. As he looks back, maybe if I'd have spoke out, because I am Michael Jordan, maybe if I'd have spoke out, maybe some things could have been different. And I think sometimes he plays that back in the back of his mind, Skip, is that, man, maybe I should have, because remember, Craig Hodges tried to get Michael and Magic to boycott the NBA Finals.
Game one.
In
Chicago.
When Rodney King situation.
It was right after it. Yes. It was
So
in the throes of it.
Right,
yes,
right.
It was.
And so, and then, are you?
You know, that's an interesting point. That was going to be, now that's a boycott. That's game one of the finals.
NBA Finals, yes. Now that's the message.
Yes.
So, I think...
And by the way, both Michael and Magic said no.
Right.
No.
and Skip, really back then, unless they took your livelihood away, you didn't, I mean, Ali, they took it, he's like, no, I'm not going. And they took his livelihood away, but he was standing on the principle, this is my religion, I don't believe, I live in America. Them Viet Cong ain't did nothing to me. They ain't turned no water holes, they ain't turned no dogs on me, they don't deny me the ability to come into a restaurant or anything. But you really gonna kill them?
I got no quarrel with them.
Yeah, he said the Viet Cong ain't calling me no end. He say so, but I think Michael looks back as like, maybe there are some things that he should have, because a lot of times athletes don't, especially when you're that good, Skip, you become so selfish, you dedicate all your time to your craft, like Tom Brady. Tom Brady is going to look back and not going to have 1 ounce of regret about his playing career because, Skip, he's done everything. He's eaten, he's trained to be this. But Michael...
But Tom, maybe with a daughter or a son,
right.
say, I should have been there.
Maybe there's a recital I should have went to.
Yep.
But Skip, when you get to that level, you're going to miss something.
Yep.
You resign to that fact. You have to become selfish. You have to have a partner that's willing to understand that. Because we've heard rumblings about Giselle like Tommy.
Oh, definitely.
you need to come home, bro. I need some help. I need some help around here.
They, according to all those rag magazines, as Ernestine calls them, they've had a troubled marriage at different points because of what you just talked about.
Exactly.
Right.
And so, but like you said, Skip, he is very unique. You talking about the player at the high, and now he's an owner, and he is like, this is their mentality. This is what they're thinking. But he also says, Chris Paul, this is what them other 29 white guys thinking too now.
That's right.
So
that is right. And that's good.
Yes.
So he could mediate it from a powerful position that's going to be respected by both sides.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because guess what? Even though every NBA owner probably has more money than Michael Jordan, But don't none of them know, people outside of that, don't know him like they know that guy. Steve Ballmer is the wealthiest owner in all sports, 70+ billion.
Yep.
Steve Ballmer walked down the street.
No.
That guy ain't walking down the street.
He ain't walking down the street. So obviously, he's trying to make up for some lost time.
Yes.
He's trying to pay back some.
Yes.
And this was an opportunity for him to try to get both sides, to see both sides of the issue.
Yes.
And it feels like it worked in part because of his contribution. I'm not going to give him full credit for it, but in part that he did that.
Yeah, Skip, I'm a firm believer it's never too late to do the right thing. Yeah. And, you know, he donated, Brand Jordan donated $100 million over a 10-year period.
10 million a year.
And you remember and he spoke out. You remember at the George Floyd, he says, I'm tired of it. I'm tired. Which is more than we had ever heard from him.
Yep.
So I think this is weighing on him because Mike realized, hey, I got two young black men myself.
He does. Yep. Good point.
No mercy. During the NBA's postponement of games due to the players' boycott, other news about the NBA's return was revealed by Adrian Wojnarowski. According to Woj, quote, not every owner in the NBA was enthusiastic about having Black Lives Matter on the court. Shannon, what do you think of this? Are you surprised?
Absolutely not. I mean, I don't think anybody's surprised. Skip, with any protest, no matter how well-intended, you're going to have some pushback. That's just the way it is. I mean, when I look back at Muhammad Ali, Skip, you know everybody in the black community were not proud with Muhammad Ali. Because they said, hold on, wait a minute, bro. Oh, just because you can box, I had to go over there. They drafted me. What makes you better than me?
Definitely. I lived through those times.
Yes.
And he was not looked upon fondly for taking that stance by many in the black
community.
Yes.
When Rosa Parks, Miss Parks did what she did, a lot of people weren't happy like Rosa. Now, all this time, you've been going to the back. All this time, now you want to start something. Just get up and give your seat up.
Less than Ali.
Right, but I'm saying.
I got it.
So, Skip, with any protest, you're going to find, Skip, if we were to go out here right now, there's probably 200 people on the lot. And poll them.
That.
Okay, maybe 100, maybe 50.
Yeah.
maybe a couple hundred now, but it's probably only like 25 when you and I get here. There are going to be some people that are like, I'm for the protest, I'm for Black Lives Matter, and some not. So did I actually think that all 30 billionaire owners are going to say, yeah, man, that's a good idea, yeah. Of course not. Because you have to understand, with the exception of Michael Jordan, and I think the owner of the Sacramento Kings, everybody else is, Skip, is wealthy white men. Yeah. I think the two, Sacramento and Michael Jordan, obviously African-American, are the two minorities. That's what I can think of off the top of my head. Yep. So, and a lot of times, Skip, they have, they have their thoughts. And is this Black Lives, Skip, is that going to cost us money? Because I'm in the business to make money, Skip. Anytime you open up a business, especially if it's a business for profit. Now, I get nonprofits, that's one thing. But you all operate a basketball team or a football team. Skip, you try to do what? You try to make money, right? Yep. Is this going to make me money or is it going to cost me money? Because if it's going to cost me money, I don't want to see it. And so I'm sure that's where the pushback came from. And so for me, am I surprised that all 30 owners were not on board? Absolutely not. Just like I can assure you, there are some of the 32 NFL owners, Skip, like, you know what? If the guys want to peacefully if they want to peacefully take a knee during the playing of the national anthem, so be it. But then you probably got 5, 6, maybe 10 that's like Jerry Jones. Hell no. But they won't be as vocal as Jerry is about it. So, Skip, I am not surprised that all owners were not on board with the Black Lives Matter being on the court or whatever the slogans they have on the jersey. No, this does not surprise me.
I must tell you, it did surprise me a little because I hadn't looked hard at it before. Because I had always sort of accepted the fact that NBA ownership, as opposed to NFL ownership, was far more enlightened and progressive and forward-thinking and maybe a little more left-leaning than the
Well, how
NFL.
about this here, Skip? I'm surprised a source let it get out because now you're going to have the players looking like, I wonder who the hell that owner or owners are that didn't want Black Lives Matter.
All right, so I did a little bit of digging. Not that I did anything special, but just a little internet digging on what do we know about some owners in the NBA?
Right.
Are there some potential Kelly Loefflers, as we saw in the WNBA? Right. So I'm looking, and again, I don't want to overstate this. I'm just stating facts.
Right.
I'm not leaping to conclusions that they are the ones or that in any way, shape, or form I'm accusing them of being racist.
Right.
But we do know this. These three contributed to the Trump campaign in 2016. Peter Holt of the Spurs, who's the longtime owner of the Spurs, he and his wife. James Dolan, obviously, thanks to his father. We know that he contributed. And Dan DeVos of the DeVos family that owns...
Because I think it's his sister. They got
sister-in-law is Betsy, who was obviously appointed by the President of the United States to be the United States Secretary of Education. So there's some connections there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then going a little deeper, contributing also to Trump campaigns. I don't know if this is now or then. I think it was then, but maybe it could be now. James Morris of the Pacers, vice chairman. I'm not familiar with him, but I am very familiar with Tillman Fertitta, the owner of the Rockets.
Yes.
Contributed. And this is intriguing to me. James Buss, one of the brothers who helps run the Lakers. Jeannie is in command, obviously, but James Buss did contribute to the Trump campaign in 2016.
Right.
And his father, the late, great Dr. Jerry Buss, he was a staunch Republican, but Jeannie is a Democrat. So there's some cross purposes going on there.
Yeah.
But James, one of the brothers, did contribute, okay? And if we go all full circle, for what it's worth, Dan Gilbert, often at odds with LeBron James, though he is a Republican.
Yes.
Okay. But again, I'm not leaping to any conclusions. I'm just giving you the facts, the lay of the land. So there are Republicans here who have ownership, you know, have stakes of ownership or the outright owners of these teams.
Right.
Okay. Well, I'd never really thought hard about all of the above. So yeah, it's out there.
Yeah.
It's happening. And yet, to your point, today, if some of the players in the bubble are watching right now, are they thinking, wait a second, I didn't know my owner was that? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Would it make their minds wonder to, wonder if they were the ones who didn't want BLM on the floor?
Of course. And that's what I'm probably more surprised that a source told Wojnarowski that, Skip, that it got out, because like you, guys will start to dig and start to like, man, I wonder who it is. Because, you know, it's saying Black Lives Matter. We're saying we don't matter more. We're saying we just matter. That's it. That's it. We don't matter more. We don't matter less. We matter. That's it. That's all we're saying, Skip. This notion that we think, right.
With you.
So, and that's what
I don't know. He did not specify.
Right.
Wojnarowski did not specify how many. Is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 15?
Right.
Who objected to Black Lives Matter logo?
Well, Skip, here, the NBA players, it can be just one, and they're gonna be ticked off because they're like, well, hold on, bro. Do you see what's going on out here? And so that's your thinking, huh? Skip, I just, like I said, they're in the business to make money, Skip. And if they feel something might get in the way of them making money. I was reading the article yesterday. Jeff Bezos is the first man in the world, Skip. $200 billion net worth. Do you believe Jeff Bezos is working less or more? He's working more because he's trying to accumulate more. So the thing is that when you're in the money-making business, you try to make more of that. Now, what's going to get in the way of me doing that? The owner's like, well, hold on, man. We gonna turn some of these, you know, white kids buy sneakers like NBA basketball too. It's just not the you know, the African American community, the minorities. So they're trying to do, okay, what can we do that can show our support and not get criticized or catch flack or tune someone out?
Okay.
And it's like, man, if they cut on that, all you see is Black Lives Matter court, and you see Black Lives on the back of jerseys, and you see, you know, say her name, it's like, and they don't want it. I'm sorry, Skip, that's just the way it is.
So yesterday, President Trump did an interview ahead of his speech that he gave last night, and he took another shot at the NBA by saying that I think people are tired of the NBA, took another shot at the ratings, which is inaccurate because the ratings have been sensational in the bubble.
Yes.
And he also concluded that now the NBA has become nothing but a quote-unquote political organization. And I thought, you got some heavyweight contributors here who are owners of NBA teams. Are you biting the hands that might feed you?
But here's the thing, though, Skip. He's turned everything into a political organization. The CDC is not a political organization.
No, I mean, it's just ironic you would accuse them of being.
Exactly,
Okay.
but he's turned. But Skip, you remember I told you in 2016, I said what he's done is that he's forced you to choose a side. There is no more, Skip. I ain't even into politics. I don't even look at it like that. You can't say that. You can't. He's forced everybody, and that's why you have camps now. You're here or you're there. There's no more middle ground. That's just the way it is. So everything has become institutions that used to be non-political. You had to be, Skip, because you work for the American people. It's somehow all of a sudden political.
Okay. My final observation about all this is loved all the boycotts starting with the Bucks, but we have had no basketball the last few nights, and the NBA did leave last night's stage wide open for the acceptance speech of our president, right?
Yep.
So he got the stage to himself.
Right.
So that's a downside to the boycotts.
Skip, do you want to be the owner that says, I don't agree with Black Lives Matter?
You want to be?
Yeah.
Well, I know one who did for political purposes in the WNBA.
Yes. But I can't imagine an NBA owner.
In NBA.
The NBA. And say Black Lives. Exactly. But you remember Donald
one of
Sterling
them had political aspirations to rise up in the Republican Party to the Senate or wherever.
Yeah, I don't.
But that would be the only way.
You be taking a severe pay cut.
Well, I'd say.
No mercy. Yesterday, during a radio interview, NFL VP of Football Operations Troy Vincent got emotional while discussing the shooting of Jacob Blake and the protests we've seen from professional athletes. Take a listen.
But when I saw Doc Rivers and LeBron and George Hill, I think about my three boys. Dang it. And I'm sitting up here every day having a conversation about contact tracing and are we going to play ball? And I got a 22-year-old and a 20-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I'm trying to prevent from being hunted. And they're teachable moments, and I'm trusting my Lord. Trusting him. I'm proud of what the guys and the women are doing. As we would say, a unified people always defeat unified money.
Wow. Shannon, what was your reaction to what Troy said?
Skip, I know Troy Vincent very well. I played against him. He's a man of faith. He's very devout in his faith.
And by the way, for those who've forgotten, he was once upon a time the 7th overall pick by the Dolphins. Yep. So he was a really good player.
Yes. Yeah, I think he went to 4 or 5 Pro Bowls.
Yep.
Ended up finishing his career at the Eagles, if I'm not mistaken, Skip. His emotions are raw, like a lot of people. And he's talking about he has 3 black sons that George Floyd, Jacob Blake, Ahmaud Arbery, all that is going through your mind. Skip, you know, I tell the story about Oscar Romero, who was an El Salvador. He was a Catholic priest who was later canonized and became Saint Romero. And he said some things can only be seen through the eyes that have cried. Skip, I remember the first time I really cried for my grandmother is when I found out what Alzheimer's is. And I saw people that was, you know, married and had been with someone for 50 years, and they didn't recognize them. And it really dawned on me that my grandmother could be afflicted with this, and she wouldn't remember her baby. My grandmother had raised me. I slept with my grandmother until I was 15 years of age. So now, how is that going to make me feel, Skip, the woman that I know loved me with all her heart, loved me more than she loved her own, she wouldn't remember me. You see, a lot of people, if you don't have black young men or you don't have a black daughter or son, or daughter, a black daughter or son, Skip, you can't possibly fathom. People ask me, Shannon, what's the hardest job you've ever had? And I was thinking about it. I did manual labor, grew up on a farm, chickens, bale hay, loaded watermelons, picked pecans, clipped onions. You know what I told him, Skip? Being black. It's the hardest job in America because you don't get paid for it. And it's a heavy burden to bear. And you can't get good at it because all you'll ever be is black. And no matter what you become, it will always be preceded by being black. He's a coach. Oh, Doc Rivers, a hell of a black coach. Oh, he's a quarterback? Boy, that was a hell of a black quarterback. He's the first black quarterback to do this. He can't ever be just that. He'll always be black. Boy, that's a heavy burden. And that's a job to be that. And guess what, Skip? Can't nobody teach you how to be black. And you're just born with it. And then you go from there. And you have to navigate your way in society. What to say, what not to say. How to look, how not to look. How to cut your hair, how not to cut your hair. All these things that white parents never tell their kids, we got to have these constant conversations. I have a conversation with my son all the time. You good? I always worry when he calls me like, damn, something going on, Skip, be about to be 28. And I always tell him, I say, son, if they rob you of your dignity in the street, live with it. Live with it. Live with it. Daddy coming. Daddy might be getting ready to go on there with Skip, but Skip will understand, I'm coming. I got the means. We get the best attorneys. We got to go to Eric Garland. We got to go to Slade Eye. Whoever we got to get. We get it rectified. But I can't do nothing if you in the morgue, bro. So it's not worth it. And he's saying this is raw. You feel the emotion. You hear that from a lot of black fathers. You hear it from Chris Webber. You hear it from Doc Rivers. You hear it from Jim Jackson that used to work here, Skip. Robert Orr, you hear that. And if you don't have that, if you don't have that fear, Skip, you know what? I was wondering, I was thinking, I'm going to turn it over to you, Skip. I wonder what. Do white parents ever worry about this? Of their sons, daughters walking out the door, having contact with a police officer and not coming home? I wonder that. I wonder. Because we do. Every time.
Obviously you do.
I do.
And obviously we don't.
Skip, and he said you would be naive to think that some players in the NFL are not thinking about what the NBA players did last night.
Yesterday was a very good day for the National Football League. I was very proud of the reaction of that league after what happened with the NBA. The NBA and the Bucks set the tone. That was the first big domino. But the NFL, the players, they spoke and acted well for themselves. But I want to get back to Troy Vincent and how powerfully those words, just in audio, because it was on radio, hit me. It hit me just as hard as Doc's speech that he gave the other night hit me. I want to remind everybody, Troy Vincent is the head of football operations for the National Football League. Once upon a time, for 5 years, he was the head of the NFL Players Association as a player back in the 90s. Into 2000s. And he has risen up the ranks. He is a right-hand man of Roger Goodell. He is a first lieutenant of Roger Goodell.
He is.
He's in a very powerful position, and at times he has to be a little careful about what he says publicly.
He's privy to a lot of private conversations.
A lot of private conversations. And what do you always tell me about Roger Goodell? He represents 32 very powerful, strongly opinionated men.
Yes.
And in the end, he has to try to keep them all happy as best he can. Well, Troy's somewhat in the same boat. So for him to speak out like this, There are some of those owners who won't love what he said.
Of course not.
He started the interview with a curse word, which again I'm fine with because he said this bleep has got to end, and it just spilled out.
Right.
I think he couldn't catch it.
Yep. Nope.
Couldn't stop it because that's the operative word for him. That word that starts with SH is his word to describe that has got to end. And he went into how his job right now entails contact tracing in case they have positive coronavirus COVID tests. And he said, I'm constantly having to worry about, can we play football?
Right.
And he's trying to say, right now, my mind has gone elsewhere.
Right.
Because I have to worry about my sons, and the words he used, being hunted. Being hunted, obviously, by white cops. And one of those sons, by the way, plays defensive tackle for Ohio State. So he's a good player, was highly recruited. And so, not that he cares anymore about that son, but he has one in a prominent position. And then Troy concluded by using a saying that we've heard before, but he said it: a unified people always defeat unified money. Okay, Troy, you work for the money, right?
Exactly.
You do.
Yes.
You're on that side of the fence right now. But he had the guts to speak out to the black community, to the black players, black and white players, obviously, that a unified front can overcome the powers that be. Those with the deepest pockets can be overcome. We're back to Dr. King. That's what he would have said.
Yes.
Yes. And for Troy to say that publicly was powerful to me because it's a little bit at cross purposes with the people he works for and with.
But Troy says, you know what? When the police pull me side the road, they don't know I'm as powerful as I am.
They don't.
They see me as black. They don't know I'm a couple of doors down. From Roger Goodell.
He is.
He's probably the most powerful.
He might be next door.
Exactly. So Skip, when they pull you over, they don't know how many degrees you got. They don't know how much money you got.
No.
All they know is that you black. That's what you are.
That's it. So I want to applaud Troy Vincent for taking this stand. It really resonates with me. And I said this about Doc's soliloquy that he gave the other day. It's great when LeBron speaks out or Chris Paul speaks out or anybody else speaks out in prominent player positions. But for Doc Rivers, the son of a Chicago cop, to take that kind of a stand, and then for Troy Vincent to risk his job a little bit, to step out of character and take this stand, it's powerful.
And he mentioned, Skip, he said, but in full transparency, many not, he said, talking about the owners, he said, because they're not in the disruption business. And you see, and that's the thing, because, Skip, when I say being black is a hard job, because it's a job, Skip, no matter what the job is, I can go to school. I can go get an education for it, or I can be in an apprenticeship under it and learn it. There is no education for being black. There's no apprenticeship. You're that, and then you navigate your way in the world being that.
Right. So I want to applaud and appreciate two teams yesterday. The Tennessee Titans stood as a group, and their quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, spoke up and out for them.
Yes.
And even more so, I want to congratulate the Baltimore Ravens, for whom you play, because they posted a statement yesterday.
Yes.
I'm going to credit Ronnie Stanley, who's their all-pro left tackle out of Notre Dame, because he is their player representative. So I'm assuming he had a lot to do with this. They posted a very detailed and specific list of goals that... Specific, like this, we need to do this, we want to accomplish that, and we demand that we get this. And just a quick couple of points, because it goes on and on. Number one, arrest and charge the police officers responsible for Breonna Taylor's killing and the shooting of Jacob Blake, okay? Demand that Senator Mitch McConnell bring the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act of 2020 to the Senate floor for a vote. In qualified immunity, require body cameras, ban chokeholds, no-knock warrants, hold police accountable in court, establish a framework to prohibit racial profiling in federal, state, and local levels. It just goes on and on. It's detailed, specific actions that they want to have taken, right? Okay, good for Baltimore, because I've seen no team get together and issue a statement like that because that works.
Yes.
You always say, don't give me symbols, give me actions,
Yes.
right?
And they gave you a list of the actions they would like to see you take.
Whew.
And then, okay, now we're talking, Skip.
Okay, now we're talking because these are specific, detailed
Yes.
goals that, to me, are achievable.
Yes.
Okay.
Skip, can we say, I hate having to say this, we're not talking about all, because we realize that there are some good police officers. More often than not, they're
I would
good.
hope to say more often than
Yes.
not. But there's some really bad apples.
Yes.
They're still out there.
Yes, but a couple of bad apples will ruin the whole batch.
You got that.
So you end up having to throw it out. But you got to get the reform. You got to change the way they do business, Skip.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad. And people, you know, when you protest racism or you say end racism, people automatically, well, you can leave the country. It just shows you, Skip, how ingrained racism is in America. Because when I protest racism, you said I'm protesting America. I said I hate racism. I didn't say nothing about I hate America. But then you take the leap because you know what's ingrained.
Whew, that Ravens statement was pretty powerful, and hopefully other teams will see it as an example of what they should be doing. And I just hope that whoever needed to hear what Troy said, what Doc said, what Robert Horry said, I hope they heard it and thought about it. And people do a good job detaching from situations if it's not something that's going to affect them. But we gotta start listening and opening our hearts to what is happening.
No mercy.
The NBA players have officially boycotted their games for 2 days now over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Play is now set to resume as soon as today, but reports are that tomorrow is more likely. Professor, author, and human rights activist Michael Eric Dyson joining us this morning. Michael, so good to have you. We appreciate your time. And I want to ask you, what did the NBA players accomplish with these boycotts?
I mean, so much. First of all, it's great to be here always with you, Jenny, and Skip and Shannon. The reality is they accumulated visible capital, the capital of attention. We live in a political economy of attention. So much is grabbing for our attention. We're on the social media. We're on television. We are constantly 24 hours watching your show on repeat. But the reality is that they broke through this iron cage, airtight air cage of media to deliver a message. We are not going with business as usual. This is so significant that we must interrupt business as usual. We must make a point that something is more important than multi-billionaires who are own the NBA as the team owners. Something more important than the playoffs, which are incredibly dramatic, with Luka emerging as a star and LeBron playing out of his mind for a man 35 and above. What's more important is the fact that Black people are dying in the streets. What's more important is that we must leverage our political capital, our political attention to a serious matter, and interrupt business as usual and say that this is of paramount importance. Doc Rivers crying on television, Troy Vincent on radio and television doing the same thing. Two men of esteem, august, solid, solemn gentlemen who are not easily given over to every whim and caprice, every emotional wind to blow. These men have been unmoored, have been uprooted from their usual stance of holding a face of stoicism in the face of American tragedy and carnage, and have now said enough is enough. So the NBA players and the Major League Baseball players and the National Football League players and belatedly the National Hockey League players have done something extraordinary. They have come together. They have forged a compact. Yes, it is ad hoc. Yes, it is spontaneous, but it has had a tremendous effect in terms of seizing the authority away from those who would be negative and divisive and saying, we have something to say. We will not shut up and dribble or toss a pigskin or hit a baseball or hit a black puck, but we will do something more important. We will show our humanity, and we will show that we are no different than any other person out here, especially a Black person, a man or woman. The WNBA especially doing an incredible job of dramatizing this plight and predicament. So I'm so proud of how they have handled themselves, and that's what they've achieved.
Doc, if you don't mind me asking, what should the athletes, And since we're talking about all platforms, what should the NBA players, what should the MLB players, what should the NFL players, WNBA players, what should they demand of their owners that they do now moving forward?
That's a great question. And I think that when we've heard that they are asking the owners of the NBA teams, don't just rest on your laurels. You're getting love just for not being the owners of the NFL. Ain't much. That's a low bar. Oh, you mean we're not conservative to a degree that we are indifferent to the plight and predicament of black people, or like Major League Soccer with one of the major figures there saying some horrendous things? The reality is that they've got a low bar, but you got to do more than that. You can't just be nice. You got to be effective. You can't just be interested in the future of African-American people. After all, you employ a great degree of them, and your product is their body. What they must demand of them is to use and leverage their authority as owners. You know, Brother Mark in Dallas, Brother Michael in Charlotte, and many of the tremendous owners in Philadelphia. You got to, and they've done an extraordinary job of criminal justice reform. Look at what has gone on in Philadelphia. An owner of a team, or a partner, I think as they're now calling themselves, can say to the criminal justice system, what you're doing is wrong. You must have prosecutors who are concerned about calling a grand jury in the cases where black people are dead or die at the hands of police. And if not, we've got to vote you out of office. Talk to some of your friends. I think about that line from The Godfather when they met, Godfather 1, when they met around the table. And they said the Godfather must share so many of those politicians that he collects as so many trinkets. Yes. Well, you do the same thing as an owner of an NBA team. You got connection. So now all your bragging has to be brought to bear. Oh, yeah, we got politicians. We got political figures. We got billionaires. Then use your effective relationships with them to demand police reform, to demand an end to qualified immunity. Now, you can't wave a wand and do that, but raise your voice. Can you imagine if the owners of the NBA would come out and say, these are some specific things we have to fight, stand your ground laws in 20 states that essentially arm white men overwhelmingly with guns to be able to kill black people with the Castle Doctrine? These young men and women have become specific and particular. Now it's up to the owners to own up to their responsibility of finding simpatico with these black men and women and these Latinx men and women and these European and white brothers and sisters, and find a way to speak to the issues that need to be addressed.
So, Dr. Dyson, as usual, I appreciate the power of your words.
Thank you,
My
sir.
question for you is this. Did the NBA players go far enough in your estimation? Did they wield enough of their power? Should they have boycotted longer? Should they have gone to the nth degree and said, no more playoffs, we're done for this season? Did they go far enough to make enough statement? And yet it's conflicting for me because they still have the bubble. They still have their platform. They have now walked away from it briefly, and they're back on their platform, and they can speak out from that platform. So which did they go far enough in your opinion?
I think they absolutely did. Look, they're living in the real world, right? When we talk about realpolitik, the real world, this is the real deal. And when you leverage your authority, you have to do so within the context of the structures that you have to abide by. Robert Frost, the great poet, said, freedom is moving easy in a harness. You do have a harness,
Yeah.
but you're moving easy in the harness.
Yeah.
And when you think about that old story, you got a chicken and a pig having a conversation. Hey, let's both make a contribution for breakfast. Oh, okay. The chicken, what do you have to do? I have to give up an egg. What does the pig have to do? You got to give up your behind. You got to die in order to make breakfast, right? So are you a pig or are you a chicken? And so the reality is that the players understood. The owners do have options. We can cut y'all out. We can suspend the CBA. We can make it hard on you, force majeure, right? They can, all kind of Latin terms they can deploy to jack things up. Now, this is owners. These are owners who claim to be ostensibly committed to the same interests of those players, but they also have their bottom line. So you got to understand what the bottom line is. But the beautiful thing about the Clippers and the Lakers, we're willing to shut it down. That sent a signal that I don't care how much money you got. I don't care what you're doing. If you're going to be in league with Muhammad Ali, did Muhammad Ali not give it all up?
Yep.
As did he not sacrifice the entire livelihood that he had in order to make a bigger statement? Now, thank God they didn't have to do this, but I think they went far enough in this sense. The players, and I know Shannon has made this point before, and so have you, Skip, and the wonderful Jenny, the players now have to forge connection with other groups who do this for a living, right? They ain't professional social activists. They use their platform to leverage their authority, but they should also make visible African-American Policy Forum with Kimberly Crenshaw, Judith Brown Dennis, with her tremendous group. Think about Sherilyn Ifill with the Legal Defense Fund of the NAACP. Think about the NAACP. Think about the National Urban League. Think about National Action Network, which is, as we speak, holding a march in Washington, D.C. with the Reverend Al Sharpton. There are groups that do this. They are the LeBron Jameses of their organization. They are the Candace Parkers of their organization. If we can now bring together those athletes with those tremendous figures who do this for a living, that would be an extraordinary marriage that allows their message to carry forward. So yes, I think what they did, this is a race. They carried the baton the first way, the first length. They got out in front. Now they're handing the baton off to others. Now they're still in the race. They're still competing in the larger games. They will do what they have to do, but they need partners, and those partners have to be those organizations and leaders at grassroots and organized leaders among the elite who have been doing this for quite some time.
Doc, we go back and forth, and I've heard a lot of people, and I know, and you and I have talked about this, with the people that say, well, they need to stop protesting and doing because protest doesn't work. But I don't think people realize that protest does work, for the simple fact that there's a lot of legislation that have been enacted that was a direct reflection of because of the protests. And the Justice Department said the greatest singular legislation ever enacted was the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was brought out by a protest on the march from Selma to Montgomery for voting rights because they were being disenfranchised.
You're dropping more science than Einstein on here, brother. There's no question. And look, somebody tell Bruce Arians, love you. Glad you got my man Tom Brady, the GOAT. So don't be messing with my man, the GOAT down there. Just get him right now. Get him some receivers. You got them, right? Don't do the Aaron Rodgers where you just jack him up, hire Jordan Love, ain't got no weapons, all right? So let me just get my bid in for my man Tom Brady. But Bruce, where you at, Bruce? Just because you had an experience as a white guy in 1968 where you saw some protests and it didn't turn out that way, then give up your white privilege, Bruce. Then give up your white privilege, Bruce. If it doesn't work, what are you willing to do for it, Bruce? Don't blame the people that you think are ineffectively protesting. Surrender your white privilege. And by surrendering your white privilege, put in place a black head coach right now, Bruce. Forget protests. Be substantive. Now, we know he ain't going to do it. And I ain't mad at you, Bruce. I'm just being rhetorical. But I'm saying slow down with what you're saying. It's sloppy. It's imprecise. Protest is huge. There was a protest in 1776. I don't know if y'all heard about it.
Yeah.
But they were mad at some people, and they threw some tea into the river.
In the harbor.
And then they protested. And the protest led to a nation. My God. They were protesting the unjust treatment by the British. And now America was born. You claim, Bruce, I think, that it's the greatest nation in the world. Protest birthed it, sir. That's like saying, I'm proud to be the son of my mama, but we don't need mamas. We don't need mothers in order to be born. We just need test tubes. Come on, sir, stop. The reality is protest, as you said, has led to tremendous results. Martin Luther King Jr., 1963, along with tremendous Fred Shuttlesworth, Diane Nash, James Bevel, fighting. What happened? 1964, the Civil Rights Act. As you said, 1965, John Lewis and many others involved, Amelia Pointer, right? When you think about the fact that the Civil Rights Bill passed in 64, the Voting Rights in 1965, the Fair Housing Act in 1968, Protest is incredibly important. It's strategic. It's directed. How do we know it's important? How do we know it's effective? You got mad at Colin Kaepernick for protesting. 4 years later, more of your football players understand what he was trying to do then than understood it, now than understood it then, and they're a result of what he did. So, Mr. Arians and others who say protests ain't important, you just mad because it is important. It's so important that a young 17-year-old boy in Kenosha shot 2 protesters and murdered them in cold blood, because protest is extremely important, extremely impactful, and has consequences that continue to reverberate. So for those who say that, I just say pick up a book, study your history, and know what you're talking about.
Doc, can I ask you a question? We put people in office. That's what the politicians are for. That's what Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham, Tim Scott, that's what they're there for. And then we have the local level. Why do we demand, why do we ask so much from our athletes that our politicians who say they take an oath and say this is what we're about, this is what we want to do, but we seem to get more and ask more from our athletes than we do our politicians?
Now, this is where Bruce Arians may be relevant. Remove one P word, protest, and put politicians in there. I ain't saying they ain't doing their job, but some of them ain't doing their job, or they're doing it effectively in the wrong direction. The reality is that the reason it falls upon us, because nobody will fight for you as much as you will. Shannon, when it comes time for you to renegotiate your contract, Skip loves you, Jenny loves you, but you got to speak for yourself. And if you don't speak up for yourself, you're not going to get the kind of contract you know you need and deserve. So the reality is that we can't depend on politicians. In fact, protests led to politicians. Without the protests, the politicians wouldn't exist. Many of them wouldn't even be in office. So we realize that, yes, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Tim Scott, Marco Rubio, and all these other figures should be doing what they're doing, and it is their responsibility. But it's our responsibility to hold their feet to the fire. It's our responsibility to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. And we can never reduce the complexity of what we need, the nuance of what we need, to a political office. Politicians cannot ultimately deliver a change of mind, of soul, of heart, that is critical to fighting anti-blackness, that is critical to fomenting anti-racism in America. Now, Martin Luther King Jr. said, the law can't make you love me, but it can stop you from lynching me. So I'm not saying the law is not critical. I'm not saying the law is not important, but at the end of the day, nobody will fight for us. When we see LeBron James and Troy Vincent and Candace Parker and Miss Ogunike and so many others who are out there representing those WNBA players, black women always leading the way, ain't they? Got gunshots on they backs. I know it's their backs. On they backs with the exact spaces where Mr. Blake was shot and his name spelled out on their shirts and pushing for legislation. This is what is critical. We can never depend upon politicians to represent our interests, but we have to appeal to them to make certain that they continue to articulate the noble aspirations for which we hired them in the first place.
So, Doc, sum this up for us. Speaking of all the protests, all that we saw in the wake of the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis, all the black people and the white people who turned out to protest, do you sense that we experienced any racial progress in this country to this point?
That's a great question. And look at it in précis. Look at it in short form. We said about George Floyd, oh my God, things are different. This is a new day. And I don't doubt that, because I think in many ways it is truly the case. We didn't have news people from all over the world when Eric Garner died to the same degree, and he died from the same malady. I can't breathe. A cop choking his airways, asphyxiating him. And then now we get the predictable posthumous demonization of Mr. Floyd. He had enough fentanyl in his body. I don't care what he had in his body, methamphetamine or fentanyl. It didn't kill him. He was still breathing when you came. The homicide was the direct result of Mr. Chauvin, former cop Chauvin, putting his knee on his neck, right? So the reality is that, yes, it is extremely important for us to talk about, the issues at play here. But when we speak about who is responsible ultimately and who is culpable, then we've got to speak about the issues that are before us. And yes, there was a tremendous change with George Floyd. But look at what happened. Not what was that, May 25th? And we're in August? And then another black man is killed? and then shot in the back. And then this is what you think. Do you cops even have common sense? Somebody's watching you. You're going to be put on camera. You probably will get fired, but this is what they know. It doesn't make a difference. I have qualified immunity. The people who are the prosecutors most likely will not hold me accountable. And I will literally get away with murder. The difference now is that we are not taking it lying down like Mr. Floyd, literally. He took it, they thought by Mr. Floyd being prostrate on the ground that we're going to take it lying down. No, we won't. We will rise up. And as you said, Latinx people, white brothers and sisters, putting their bodies on the line. The 2 protesters who were killed the other night were white.
Yep.
Right? Mr. Viola Luito in 1965 from Detroit, Michigan, who was leaving the march, murdered by racist bigots. Heather Heyer in Charlottesville, white woman on the front line. This is what allyship looks like when black bodies are not the only bodies dying. Because when white bodies begin to accumulate in the death toll here, something different will happen. Look at the way in which even the racist police force in Kenosha, and yes, I said that, tried to justify this young man by saying the reason the killing happened is because the curfew was violated.
Right.
Are you that crass and craven? Are you that indifferent to the rule of law that after a certain time it's legitimate to explain and justify an act of murder? This is what we're dealing with. And by the way, I know people are quick to rush, all the cops ain't bad. Show it. Prove it. You know, that argument can no longer work. Because when you meet the wrong cop who kills you, all the good cops in the world are not there to save you. And let me tell you something why cops may not be as good as we say they are. Where are the good ones speaking up? This is wrong. We disagree with this. This is a contravention of our own convention. This is the rule of law that is being subverted here. Where are the, quote, good cops? The system itself is sick. It is not just one bad apple. The bad apple is falling from a perverted tree. The tree has to be chopped down. The good cops that come through, and there are plenty of them, are set in a system that is itself defective. This is why defunding the police is critical. That doesn't mean we get rid of cops. That means we reassign them. That means that when we have a mental health issue and crisis going on, why are you sending an armed spokesman for the state as opposed to a person who is a mental health advocate who can address them? So my point is, we've got to have more than a few bad apples from the tree. We got to cut the tree down, and we've got to ask why it's so perverted in the first place. Then those good cops can be reassigned in public safety to make certain that we are protected and served as they are supposed to do.
Whew.
Good job,
Eric
Doc.
Dyson, thank you. We appreciate your insight, your words. Always, we hope to see you in person at some point sooner rather than
Doc, tell us
later.
about the book before you go.
Don't forget, it's Tears We Cannot Stop.
Yes.
Available everywhere.
Thank you so very much.
it.
I got a new one coming. When it comes out, I'm going to come back on the show and hang out with y'all. It is the color of Jenny's wonderful dress this morning. So in homage to her, my book cover came forth.
Oh, I appreciate that. And we will chat with you soon. Thank you so much again.
No mercy.
After the remainder of the NBA season was nearly lost to protest, players agreed it was in their best interest to finish out the playoffs. The league released a statement saying, quote, "We are hopeful to resume games either Friday or Saturday." LeBron also changed his tune from pushing to cancel the season Wednesday night to yesterday siding with the majority of the players who wanted to play. Fox Sports NBA analyst Chris Broussard with us this morning. Chris, what do you make of LeBron's change of heart here?
Well, I was incredibly surprised a few nights ago when the reports came out that LeBron had decided they should boycott the rest of the season. I mean, I was shocked that he was on that side of things, knowing how much he wanted to win this championship and knowing that, you know, dating back months ago when talk of boycotting came up before they even went to the bubble, that he never even considered it, never even wanted to really discuss it. And so that surprised me. And I think the fact that he went there a couple of nights ago and was ready to give it all up just speaks to his frustration with the way things were playing out. And while I certainly support and have no problem with what the Bucks did, LeBron was clearly frustrated by that. We know that everything he says and does is calculated and well thought out. And that's one of the reasons he's done so many great things that he has. And to see the Bucks do it without a well thought out long-term plan, I think that just rocked him. Like, it wasn't the way he rolls. It wasn't the way he does things. And I think he was ready to just say, all right, forget it. And remember, we've heard LeBron allude a few times to how challenging it's been to him in the bubble. He hasn't gotten specific and told us what he's really talking about, but he has said several times that he's not really enjoying the way things are going there in the bubble off the court, whatever that may be, missing his family, you know, not being with his mother, his children, his wife, all of that, and maybe other things. And so I think he was feeling like, I'm giving up all of this, and another player or team can just take away this, what I'm sacrificing all this for, without even consulting me. And so I think all of that in the heat of the moment just got to him. And, you know, he stormed out of the room and was ready to give it all up. And after talking with people, obviously relaxing, thinking about it again, I think he came back to the conclusion that led him to the bubble, which is I can do both. I can use my platform to draw attention to what's going on and make these strong statements. And I can win this championship for myself and for the Lakers. Remember, this is a big thing, too, in the year of the tragic death of Kobe Bryant. So I think that's how I view LeBron's kind of roller coaster ride these past few days.
Well, for me, I don't believe he ever really wanted to boycott. I just think the thing is that he's trying to leverage, and he did a great job of leveraging it. And I do agree, Skip. It's been reported that he and Chris Paul and some others had come up with a plan of what was going to be their next course of action. And it seemed like the Bucks didn't have a well-thought-out plan. Well, maybe the Bucks says, guys, y'all need to get – if the Bucks had said, look, whatever the plan may be, can y'all get it to us? Because we're going to be up and at this thing early in the morning. And so we need to have an idea of kind of where you want to go with this. And because I guess Chris Paul and LeBron didn't get back to them, they were like, oh, okay, well, what we going to do? And it was like right up until the umpteenth minute, they weren't really sure what they wanted to do. And so when they did what they did, it caused a ripple effect. And so now it's like, hold on, wait a minute. You canceled because it was reported that Toronto and the Celtics were discussing it. But the Bucks were up first. So the Bucks say, yeah, okay, we're going to do this. And so it caused a series of events, a chain of events that I don't know if anybody else outside of the Bucks were prepared for. Now, granted, okay, if you don't want to give the league a heads up, okay, I get that. But normally, the Players Association, led by Chris Paul and Michelle Roberts, they normally do a great job. They're normally on the same page. Okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we need to do, and let's go from there. And so when that didn't happen, I'm sure it caused some frustration on LeBron and some others' part. But I don't believe LeBron was very, very, very serious about leaving. He just wants the owners to do more. You guys are not doing enough. Painting Black Lives Matter on the court, having say her name and how many more on the back of jerseys is not enough. We want the contacts that you have, the bridge that you can bridge us to them to actually bring about change that can impact the community. And so I just think Bron was using his leverage, and he has a lot of it. And so we're going to see what comes out of this. But I don't really believe LeBron was willing to walk because I believe, like you said, in the process of going to the bubble, not playing was never even on his radar.
No.
He was working out every day, believing that the bubble was going to come to fruition. And to think that now I'm here, played 9, 10, 11 games, and go walk away, I don't think that's what he's willing to do. But I do think he was willing to put pressure on the higher-ups.
By the way, remember that Friday night pre-bubble call led by Kyrie?
Yes.
80 players virtually joined in on the call to discuss should we or shouldn't we? Guess who was not on that call? LeBron
80
James.
players not named LeBron.
That's correct. And remember, Kyrie was all for let's not go. It's not a time to be playing basketball.
Right.
And most people said, well, wait a second, Kyrie, you can't go anyway. You're hurt, and you won't be allowed in the bowl. Anyway, so Chris Broussard, to me, big picture, LeBron James got George Hilled for the second time in his career. We know the first time George Hill missed that second free throw, game 1 at Oakland of the 2018 NBA Finals, that cost LeBron one of the great upsets certainly in a game 1 in his career. Because what do you have at that point? 49. Yeah. So this is George Hill strikes again. He comes out of nowhere and becomes the emotional out front leader of the Milwaukee Bucks. And George Hill was the one who said a few days back, I don't even know why we came to this damn place in the first place. So he didn't want to be there. That team was internally split over play or not play. Obviously, that team had that incident, Kenosha, happen right under its nose back in Milwaukee. So it was a home area incident that they wanted to address, and it was split. It hit them differently, and it was splitting the team apart. So they're battling internally in the locker room up to the last second. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, LeBron and CP3 had quietly gathered together a plan that would have a unified impact with a big media conference that they would preside over. LeBron would be a spokesman, and he should be the spokesman. He's the face of the league. and he is the best spokesman when it comes to any social, racial justice issue. I want to hear him speak up and speak out because he knows how to present it in a way that's palatable and powerful for everybody. All of a sudden, George Hill, after their game that obviously was postponed and boycotted, he's doing his own little hallway media conference, completely upstaging not only LeBron, but Chris Paul. And all of a sudden, it's derailed the whole unified movement that had been planned quietly by the players and the Players Association. And LeBron is out of his mind about it. And I don't blame him. Again, we know he's got some drama king. We know he can be a little bit of a diva. But in this case, he deserved to say, what are you doing? And they have this 8 p.m. Eastern players meeting with some of the coaches there also. And according to all the reports, it is chaotic and over-emotional. Everybody's got a different idea because the train is off the tracks. And finally, LeBron just throws up his hands at the last second and says, I'm out of here. Some of the Lakers follow him. I think the whole Clippers team was out, and reportedly, both teams were ready to call it a season. And fortunately, cooler heads prevailed. I said a lot of the prominent players went to LeBron's room and sort of talked him off the ledge. And now we're back in business.
It just didn't seem like it was well planned or thought out.
No, it wasn't at all. But
LeBron liked planning.
It worked, and I still applaud the Bucks for doing what they did.
No mercy. There have been no NBA playoff games the past 2 nights, and while the league left a window open for games to resume tonight, Adrian Wojnarowski is reporting that the expectation is that games resume Saturday. So Chris Broussard still with us. Which team, Chris, will be hurt the most by the postponement?
Well, you can obviously make a strong argument that any of really the top 5 teams, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Bucks, the Raptors, the Celtics, any of them could be negatively affected because all of them have at least talked about boycotting games. You know, Toronto and Boston were actually the first we heard. We know about the 2 LA teams, you know, reportedly walking out of the meeting and ready to give up the season, and then what Milwaukee did. But if you force me to pick one, then I will say Milwaukee. Obviously, George Hill is one of their leaders. He's not the best player, but he's certainly obviously one of their leaders. And I'm not sure he wants to be there. I know the Bucks as a whole voted to play, but he said, as we know a few days ago, we shouldn't have even come to this place. And so where is he at emotionally, and how is that affecting the rest of the team? And then you throw on top of that, do the Bucks feel some sort of way about a large portion of the other players calling them out and being upset with them for what they did? So how does that affect them? They don't have stars. They got star, Giannis. And how do these other guys feel about that pressure that, you know, is put on them? Now, I already think, you know, I didn't pick them to win the East. I picked Toronto to come out of the East. So I already thought their players would have trouble on the grand stage, the Chris Middletons, the Eric Bledsoes, the Brook Lopez's, guys like that. Now I think you kind of put this extra thing on their shoulders, and I think it could hold them back I think as far as LeBron, look, we've seen him play angry occasionally during his career, and it's not a good sight for the opponent. So I think he's going to come out and be tremendous. The question, again, is Anthony Davis going to come along for the ride all of the time? And are the other players going to hit threes? But I think LeBron individually will actually take his game to a higher level.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Skip.
You want to?
Yeah.
So, Chris, I agree with everything you said about the Bucks and George Hill, but I think because we both picked the Clippers, I believe you and I are both getting more and more worried by the minute about the Clippers. Before this all started, I wasn't sure the Clippers as a whole wanted to be in the bubble. So many of them were out of the bubble early on. They're just now coming back together. They're coming off their best game that they've played in the bubble. But their coach, Doc Rivers, gave that powerfully eloquent speech expressing his agony over all that's going on out in the real world. And I'm sure that has trickled down and affected all the players. And I'm not sure if Lou Williams wants to be there. I'm not sure. I know Paul George doesn't want to be in the bubble. It's not for those reasons, but he's got his own anxiety issues that he's facing. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at this team, and they followed LeBron out of the meeting the other day because I'm not sure the Clippers have that one ultra leader, that uber leader like LeBron James is. And now they're probably at odds about should we or shouldn't we. And Doc said his whole team thought it was over a night ago.
Right.
And now they're ready to go, but I'm not sure they're really ready to go like they should be.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a question mark. And Paul George, and you alluded to it the other day, Skip, he talked, and I respect him. And I think on a human level, it was great what he said about the depression and the mental anxiety and all of that. But are we sure he's over that? He had one great game. And he said he had to put it in his mind that he's in the Staples Center and that 20,000 people were there cheering and all of that. Can he do that every single game? You know, so there's just no guarantee that like that, he was able to get over it. I know he had the great conversation with Doc Rivers, and hopefully he got over it. And really, none of these guys are negatively affected, and we see them all play their best ball. But I do have concerns about the Clippers. I just can't afford to change my pick at this point.
I just think the thing is for me, Chris, is because everybody's been disrupted the same amount of time. And I think that was the thing they absolutely had to cancel Thursday's game because you'd had somebody playing on 1 day's rest while you'd had another team play, a couple of teams playing on 2 days rest. So I think now they're going to push it all the way back to Saturday and everybody will get the same amount of rest time. They'll end up getting 3 days and then they'll resume. So I don't think anybody, it might help the Dallas Mavericks because they might get an opportunity to get Porzingis back. It's being reported that Russ is going to play in Game 5. So it allowed him to get healthy. It might allow Patrick Beverley to get healthier and him to play. So I think it might have helped a couple of teams, but I don't think it negatively impacted any of the teams because they're going, all of them at one point in time, maybe not all the players, but maybe a few players on each team was willing to boycott. And so because they have the same amount of time off, I think it's going to impact everybody the exact same. Some teams, you know, have better players and going to be able to deal with it. But I like what Paul George had to say. Paul said, yeah, it was rough here. And I remember when the pandemic first hit and everybody's like, oh, cabin fever. And when they said they relaxed the guidelines, everybody went out and forgot like the pandemic didn't happen. But you remember, you could get in your car and leave. You might couldn't go anywhere, Skip, go in anywhere, but you can get in your car and go up to 405 and come back home. Well, just imagine them being there, and they can't go anywhere.
Nope. It's a long time, too. It's adding up. All right, Chris Broussard, always a pleasure.
No mercy.
And the Lakers were finally hitting their stride before the boycott of games, and the Blazers are officially without Damian Lillard, who left the bubble to take care of his injured knee. Game 5 was scheduled for Wednesday and will now be played either tonight or sometime this weekend. So, Shannon, what do you expect when they do play this game?
It's over now.
Well,
yeah, I expected to close it out, Skip. You expect
I hope
that?
So.
You expect that also. Look, the Blazers have struggled to score points. They were averaging 126 points, yet they get 103. And they don't have an answer for LeBron or AD. And it wasn't like Dame was guarding either of those guys. But they're going to really struggle to score now, Skip. And so I expect the Lakers to close it out. LeBron James will go on and do what he does. Miss trip dub, clear quarantine.
You think so?
Yeah, he might not even been there long enough to get that trip dub, but it won't be long. It's over.
Well, I don't expect the Blazers to boycott. I expect them to forfeit because they probably should. I thought maybe on Wednesday they could dredge up what was left of their pride, and they could reach down and they could put up a fight and not let LeBron front run on him like he did the previous game.
They did it for him.
Nope. Now Damian Lillard is gone. They have had to wait 3 endless days in the bubble to get eliminated. It's going to be 1, 2, 3 Cancun, and it's going to be over and out for the Trailblazers. They're going to lose by 35.
That's the worst feeling ever, Skip. I remember my brother and I, we would act up, and my grandmother was like, when I get you home, I'm going to cut your... I mean, you just got to sit, you just got to think about it. You think... So they've been thinking about this for 3 days.
And wait.
Knowing old Goat James going to go off him and AD.
Yep, and I think Rondo will have time to be back.
Well, that's what you get.
Back in
you shouldn't have won game and see if you went ahead and lost game for it. It'd been over with.
Yep.
But no, you wanted to play hard, so we got to make you suffer.
Really?
Yep.
So, advantage LeBron, way to go. The pressure is now on the Lakers. They should be prohibitively favored to win this championship. Clippers are in disarray, psychological, emotional disarray.
We went for the Blazers to talking about the Clippers.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, that's how we're going to end this thing. Jeez, I have so many questions. Good stuff today, guys. That is it for Undisputed. We'll be back at the same time Monday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Have a good weekend.
No mercy, no mercy. Skip and Shannon, skip the half.